First met Sam 33 years ago when he was a student, and he taught our son to swim. He found it difficult to swim with a large group, and he was frightfully terrified of the water. And Sam was very successful within 3 days. He taught the little fella to swim. And I think everything that Sam has touched has turned to gold, which is wonderful.
He was so well respected at Amory. Everybody loved him, and he had so many friends, and he was just so well thought of, and he was just the perfect kid growing up. And it's just been amazing how he's just carried through all these years. You know, once he got to LA, everybody was, I think, so shocked that he could carry on those same values that he grew up with as a child. And I've spoken with many of them about that, and they've all said the same thing, that they could not believe that there was actually someone that could carry on the same principles and values of life that he grew up with in that kind of world.
And I knew his mother, and she was so precious, and definitely made such an impact on him. You know, he knew what was right and what wasn't.
He didn't change.
We celebrate today the launch of Sam Haskell's memoirs, Promises I Made My Mother. It is his first stop on what will become a 56-city promotional tour in the months ahead. Sam and his equally talented wife, Mary, have always been generous people. They believe that if one is blessed with good fortune, it is his obligation to give back to worthy causes and those in need. We could talk about the Haskells all day, but of course you want to hear from him. So now I give you Sam Haskell III.
Thank you, Patty, and I'm so happy to see all of you here today. Patty and Will Lewis have been my friends for over 33 years. In 1976, I performed in the Ole Miss Summer Showcase Theater, and because I had such a booming swimming lesson business in Amory, Mississippi, I was concerned about the amount of money that I would be losing by accepting this part in this musical called Promises, Promises. One of the co-stars is actually here today, Carolyn Annis-Brodowski, who was in that with me. But I was very worried about losing that swimming lesson income, and the very first call I got was from Patty Lewis. She wanted me to teach Goodloe to swim. And after I taught Goodloe to swim at the Oxford Country Club, the phone started ringing, and I had swimming lessons lined up the rest of the summer. And Patty Lewis and her husband Will and her family are here 33 years later, still supporting me and helping me. And to have this party on this gorgeous, gorgeous grounds of Shadow Lawn, this incredible home, Mary and I have always admired it, is such an honor for me. And since we're going to be moving to Oxford at the end of the year, it is only fitting that the first book signing be in Oxford, Mississippi. I have been asked in over 30 pre-interviews that I've done for newspapers across the country so far why I wrote this book. And my answer is simply this: I had to write this book. I have been so incredibly blessed and so lucky. And that definition of luck is when opportunity and intense preparation meet at the crossroads. But still, I consider myself lucky and oh so blessed. My mother and my Aunt Betty are major characters in this book because I learned from them what character and fairness and honesty and faith are about.
I think, to be honest, because, you know, Sam's first job was William Morris. He graduated from Ole Miss, packed his car, his Cutlass salon, drove across country, and went out to Los Angeles and Hollywood on a wing and a prayer, literally, you know. I think what his mother meant to him in those early years, especially because he could call his mother at those times when he wondered, have I made the right decision? Do I have any business at all being out here in Hollywood? And she was always supportive. He writes about it in the book. He tells that certainly the world of Hollywood and the world of television wasn't necessarily something that she understood to a great degree, other than just as most of America enjoys television. but what she understood most importantly is humanity. So she was always right there to say, hang in there.
So many people have asked, you know, living in Hollywood for 30 years, all the people you've met, all the different things you've gotten to do, what really sticks out in your mind? And many of those are in this book, and I think you're going to enjoy reading them. But I want to share one with you today. And this has to do with meeting one of my all-time idols, two-time Academy Award-winning actress Bette Davis. I had always fantasized about meeting the stars. When I was 10, I shelved books at the Amory Public Library for 50 cents an hour and took every opportunity to read each book, magazine, or newspaper I could find to learn about Hollywood. We had material on all the top Hollywood stars: Clark Gable, Loretta Young, James Stewart, Elizabeth Taylor, Grace Kelly, Judy Garland, Vivian Leigh, Katharine Hepburn, Humphrey Bogart, and Bette Davis, and I read them all. Bette Davis in particular fascinated me. Somehow she didn't seem like the typical movie star. She was more handsome than beautiful, and she seemed so grounded I just loved her. My fascination never faded, even as I grew older. I was dying to meet her someday. In the spring of 1982, after I'd been an agent for 2 years, I was responsible for covering every single talk show and variety show on television. If there was a spot into which I could book a William Morris client, it was my job to find it. I got hundreds of William Morris clients on the air, and I was excited to go to the office every day. I also worked with the producers and packagers we represented to help them put together their network television projects. Sir David Frost and his partners had come up with a 2-hour special called the American Movie Awards. We sold it to Brandon Tartikoff at NBC as an alternative to ABC's yearly Academy Awards telecast. My boss, Deborah Miller, assigned me to the new David Frost special, and I was thrilled to be a part of its creation. At the first production meeting, Sir David announced that producer Hal Wallace would get the first American Movie Award Lifetime Achievement Award. Wallace had produced so many movies I can't list them all here, but they included Anne of the Thousand Days, Barefoot in the Park, The Man Who Came to Dinner, The Maltese Falcon, and Casablanca. Mr. Frost said he wanted Bette Davis to present the award to him. She and Wallace had done several movies together, including Jezebel, for which Miss Davis had won her second Best Actress Oscar in 1938. "Who knows Bette Davis?" David asked, explaining that someone had to call and ask her if she'd appear on the show. The room, full of producers, writers, and network executives, remained silent. "All right, then," David said. "Does anyone know Marion Rosenberg, Bette Davis's agent?" I didn't know Marion, but I raised my hand anyway and said, "I'll call her." Mr. Frost said, "Thank you, Sam, but Marion will probably make you call Bette yourself, and she's tough. Do you think you're up for the job?" I'd barely replied, "Yes, sir," when the older men in the room started telling me horror stories about Bette Davis, suggesting that I should just reconsider having volunteered for this task. I didn't care what they thought of her. I was determined to talk to Bette Davis. Sir David told me to call the next morning and report back to him. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called her agent, Marion Rosenberg. As predicted, she told me I'd have to call Miss Davis directly. She warned me that there would be many questions, and that the way I answered those questions would determine the eventual outcome. When I got through to Miss Davis's assistant, Catherine Cermak, she put me on hold. It seemed like I waited a half hour, but it was probably only 5 minutes. While on hold, I prayed that God would help me find the right words. My prayer was interrupted by a voice I knew all too well. "Mr. Haskell, this is Bette Davis. What exactly would you have me do, and how does it involve Mr. Hal Wallace?" I explained it. Probably sounded like a rehearsed speech, but I explained it anyway, and it came straight from my heart. Why we were honoring Hal Wallace, why she was the best qualified person to get him the Lifetime Achievement Award, why I had to have her do this. "What exactly are the American Movie Awards?" she asked. Remember, it was the first year. I explained the idea behind Sir David's show. She laughed and said, "David will have his hands full with the Academy over this one." That led into a 15-minute discussion about who I was, my age, where my accent came from, how long I'd been an agent, etc. I must have answered all the questions correctly because Miss Davis agreed to do the show.